Good to see everyone this afternoon. Probably having now 72 hours or so to reflect, go back and look at the film a couple times. Felt like probably my assessment in the post-game press conference was accurate. We struggled to stop the run game and had opportunities with about 5 minutes left in the game to get one last big stop. Offensively, we needed to convert a couple more third downs. There with about 7 minutes left in the game. If you'd have told me we were down 23-20 or 20-17, excuse me, we had the football and it was 2nd and 6, I'd have thought, you know what, we got a good opportunity to convert. I felt like offensively we were moving the ball pretty well. We were making good decisions. We were taking the high percentage throws, turning them into some good quality gains. Our run game was solid. We weren't necessarily getting any explosive plays, but we were falling forward for 4 and 5 yards. And there were some good things during the course of the game, but unfortunately, when you play a good football team like that, you need to play more consistently throughout the day. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Coach, your first question is from Devin Fry.
Coach, after having a couple days since the game, having some chance to look over film, what do you think is going to be the biggest focus heading into the playoffs?
Well, defensively, we got to tackle better. I think you go back and watch the film, way too many missed tackles. I think we commented on that probably on Saturday. That was easy to see. We need to do a better job of getting our opponents off schedule. And then offensively, execution. I think we still have room to improve. And it's going to continue to have to be a unique juggling act to make sure we got the right people up front playing for us on the offensive line.
When you're this late in the season, how do you personally go about that approach? Cleaning up those execution things, the tackling. Kind of how do you approach something like that at this point in the year?
Well, it's the tackling issue is something that you're a little bit more concerned about because I feel like up to this point we've been a solid tackling team, and unfortunately, all our bad tackles or all our missed tackles seem to fall into one game. But we're going to have to emphasize it still. We're still I should say, young enough group that I think we can continue to really emphasize those fundamentals. It'd be different if we had 30 seniors, but with us having only a handful of seniors, we need to continue to emphasize all the fundamentals and technique things that we can. And then up front, we just got to make sure that we're prepared. We're going to have to create some depth. That's why we double rep during fall camp, spring camp, whatever you want to call it. Next man up mentality. We need to be ready to go.
And when you're coming into the playoffs off of a loss like that, kind of how do you shake that off? How do you go ahead and move on knowing, that you're going into win or go home territory?
Well, we had a conversation yesterday, team meeting. We talked about it. We talked about the pros and the cons, the things we need to continue to work on. Our kids are smart football players. They know before coming into meetings what they need to work on. And then moving on. Not going to talk about South Dakota State anymore. We got to make sure that we're ready to play Eastern Washington. And it's always, when you get beat, and regardless if you get beat big or you get beat in a tight, close game, the last thing you ever want to allow it to do is beat you twice. And so we need to move on. We need to find ways to finish and to execute better. It doesn't matter if it's a play, a series, a quarter, or a game.
Thanks, sir.
You bet.
Ross Uglum.
Coach, you mentioned a potential musical chairs type situation with the offensive line. Do you know anything about Gray's availability?
He will be out for the game.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll have to make some adjustments.
Defensively, you guys, you mentioned you have a young group. I mean, the entire team obviously is young. What do you think you guys can improve on even through the end of this season?
I think execution, assignment, alignment. I think all those things we can continue to improve on. When you're talking about a fair or a good majority of the guys who play for us have maybe only 5 or 6 games under their belt, I think there's always room to continue to improve on. And then fundamentally, you're always looking to improve. I don't think you ever stop improving on those things. It doesn't matter if it's the off season or the in season.
How difficult is it, though, to address tackling specifically? I mean, this late in a season, now it's win or go home. You don't want to get guys hurt. I mean, how do you balance wanting to improve the tackling with having your own kids hit each other?
Sure. We're just going to have to come up with some, we have a thud philosophy in practice. We don't take anyone ever down to the ground, especially after fall camp. But we got to just make sure that we are thudding. We're getting a chest on the ball carrier. And so we're doing everything but the actual finish piece. We're keeping the cup. We have great leverage. I think all those things we can continue to emphasize. It's something that we emphasize every week anyway. And we just got to make a greater emphasis of it now.
Thank you.
You bet.
Brian Shawn.
Matt, James Kaser went down. How is he looking going?
Still day to day with James right now. And so he had been battling a growing issue, and he's in for treatment every day, and we'll see just what the doctors say. But, hopefully we'll have him back. He's a heck of a football player. Our leading tackler, I think he has close to 80 tackles over the course of the spring, and it'd be a blow to us if we didn't have him.
Schematically, how would you operate, or is that still something you would look at depending on his availability about who you would necessarily roll down to play outside linebacker?
Well, I think we're all we have is what's on the roster right now. So you're going to see some other young guys that have to get thrown into the mix. Some other guys who have some experience are going to have to step up and maybe be willing to learn a secondary or a tertiary position just to give us some flexibility and some depth. You guys have watched them. They're going to try to get 85 to 90 snaps, and we better have more than just our 11 ready to go.
And then just lastly, Coach, with Barrier, it seems like you can have him surrounded. Just watching the last two games of Eastern Washington, and all of a sudden he squirts away and you'll pick up 20 on the ground. I would guess that gap assignment and keeping the cup are probably two huge emphasis this week.
Well, it will be, especially for the defensive line, and just trying to control our rush angles, control our rush levels, so we can keep him in the pocket. He does a great job scrambling to his arm, our left, his right. He spins out of things. He steps up, slides. We're going to have to do a great job of forcing him to stay in the pocket. I think there's a significant difference in his completion percentage when you force him to stay in there and get uncomfortable than if you let him just scramble out there and extend a play, and then it becomes a scramble rule. And we've already started, the process of working on that, on being able to, make sure we're latching on to our coverage, even in big zone when scramble situations do occur.
Thanks, Coach.
You bet.
Mike McFeely.
Hey, Matt.
How are you, Mike?
I'm okay. Thank you for asking. In the spring season, you guys are -8 in the turnover margin, and yet you're 5-2.
Yep.
It's like an anomaly. It seems like an odd stat. Does that seem odd to you?
It does. Traditionally you go back and look at, benchmark stats. I think that's one of them. Turnover margin. Typically, if you're +2, you win probably about 85-90% of your games, and we've kind of been an outlier this year. Not because of a lack of emphasizing it, just comes down to a lack of finishing. I think you saw a great example this week. We're in cover 2, and the ball bounces off Jazeer Cox's hands. Was it at you and I? Ball bounced off Jaden Price's hands. We can put them in the right position. We continue to emphasize finishing at the football. What I knock on wood, they'll come in a bunch when they finally do come. You got to stay positive.
And I guess you already sort of answered this, but after the game, Jackson Hankey said, we need to force some turnovers. We need to disrupt things a little bit more defensively. Yep. How do you do that? What do you do to
emphasizing at practice, always, allowing with our ball carriers, it's something that we always do, but making sure that the second guy's getting in, trying to get a strip. We're trying to get mere hands up, so we're trying to get some tips and enforcing some overthrows. And then, the big thing, Mike, is just finishing at the football. In practice, if we're dropping it, well, a lot of times you're going to end up dropping it in the game. We need to make sure that we're focused enough that we can look it in, tuck it away, and make sure we have the football at the end of the play. And right now, we're just not doing a very good job of that.
Your opponents, I think they've only fumbled like a couple times. And I'm not sure you've recovered a fumble yet this spring. Is that a point of emphasis too? It's all interceptions, fumble recoveries, everything's an emphasis. Anytime you say ball disruption, man, anytime we can create a takeaway, that's a positive. And one last question is offensive line. What options do you have? Kubas came in when Zabel down. Are there other options? Are there some other young guys that could be ready to go, or what are some things you can do there?
Well, Zach Willis can still play for us. Zach missed the first couple games of the year as we were trying to get him healthy from a surgery that he had this fall. So he's available. I think he's played a little bit for us. There is the ability to move some people around if we need to. Jake Rock has played some snaps for us. Mason Miller has played some tight end position for us this year. So we're going to have to be creative. And probably, like I said earlier, everyone's going to have a secondary position. For us to think we're going to go into a game and play only 6, it's been a while since, or play only 5, excuse me. It's been a while since we've probably done something like that. I think traditionally we're probably playing 7 or 8 guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Eric Peterson.
Coach, now you've had time to look at the film. What did you like from Cam Miller on Saturday, and may play a larger role or even possibly start this weekend?
Right. Well, Cam provides us with the ability to do some of the quarterback run game. And not that we had any explosive plays with it, but I think you do force people to defend a little bit different. Under center, a lot of teams want to get in single high defense, play 8-man spacing. They can play some fast fits. You get into the gun, you run out of bodies real quick in single high defense. And so he forces us to sometimes you can get people into that too high structure if it's cover 2 or cover 4. He made some good throws, some accurate throws, some good decisions. But at the same time, I can sit here and pat him on the back. There were a couple plays during the course of the game that we got to continue to work on. There was the snap that I don't know what there was a communication error between him and the center. There was the couple times where I thought he should just scramble. Too many negative things happen when you want to scramble and throw late down the middle. And there was one of those moments that he did it on our near sideline. And so learning from that experience, learning from playing under the lights, I think will be critical as we find ways to continue to utilize him moving forward.
So do you intend to use both quarterbacks again on Saturday, or do you have a plan set out in that regard?
Oh, we always have a plan.
And just talk about throwing younger players in the fire. Courtney Eubanks is starting to get more time. What have you seen from him so far in the time he's played?
Courtney is extremely competitive, and you challenge him, he's gonna get out there and try to compete with anybody. Excited about his energy, his willingness to learn. He's done a great job. Coach Morgan's done a really good job with him over the course of the spring, kind of bringing him along step by step, slowly. So he does have a pretty good idea of what we're doing defensively. He's going to have to continue to play. And what it's going to do is just make us that much deeper as we continue to move forward and move into next year with that, the 21 fall season not being really that far away right now.
Do you see any parallels between Courtney and when Josh Hayes was a true freshman, a young player who had to take on more as the season went on? Oh,
I think you said it right there. The similarities are the fact that highly competitive, highly talented young men, both probably didn't know as much as they thought they did when they got here, but both had a number of recruiting opportunities. Courtney, I know we've talked about at length. I think at one time he was committed to potentially or had offers from Nebraska, Virginia Tech, and it shows you kind of the crazy world of recruiting. And if you just keep doing your job, you'll land some really talented young men.
And just finally, any players you expect back this week who didn't play last week, specifically a guy like Kobe Johnson, or anything change in that regard?
Kobe had another MRI, I believe, this week. Looks like things are getting healthy. I know he's out running at practice. He's doing some movement drills. I would be putting my foot in my mouth if I said I thought he was going to be ready to play.
Thank you.
You bet.
Nick Cousin.
Hey, Coach, how much does being an unseeded team going into the playoffs motivating this team?
I don't know if we've really talked about it. I know we have a home game right now. I know we didn't play very well our last game. I think that in itself has motivated our kids. They understand the situation, and it's no different if you're the number 1 seed or the 16th seed. At this time of the year, it's one and done. If you don't play well, you're going home, and you got to think about shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And our kids are going to be ready to go. We've tried to kind of stop the South Dakota State conversation, move on. Eastern Washington is an extremely talented team. They score a ton of points. They rack up yards at an unbelievable pace. We need to find some solid ways to get off the field defensively, and we need to help ourselves out by staying on the field offensively and shorten the game up.
With the young team, what's the toughest part about moving on from a loss?
You know, that I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to avoid your question. Probably part of the ease of moving on is some of these kids they haven't been here long enough to understand. The guys like Jackson Hankey, Noah Gindorf, Cordell Volson, our older players are taking it much more difficult or much more hard than our young kids. Our young kids all have probably experienced a loss within the last year. Some of these guys haven't experienced that many losses over the course of their career. And, we talk a lot about leaving your legacy here at NDSU. And I know those upperclassmen want to continue to play well and let's get hot and let's stay hot here through the playoffs.
What are some of the biggest differences you've seen from Barry from 2019 to now?
Oh, I think he's more accurate with the football as far as, being able to deliver. Their pass game has probably continued to expand. I think they have a solid running back in the Pierce kid. He runs hard, downhill kid. They're just like always, they're uber talented at wide receivers. They're extremely deep at that position. But again, a willingness. I think in the national championship game or 2018, he'd take a lot more hits than probably necessary. You'll see now, he'll slide, he'll get out of bounds. He understands that the next play is the most important one, rather than trying to take a hit for a gain of one more.
Jeff Kolpak.
Hey, Matt, is Grace Abel going to be back in the fall?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just addressing the seriousness of any injury.
No, it's a similar injury that we had a few years ago with one of our tight ends, and I anticipate he'll be ready for, I believe it's Albany is our home opener next year, and I anticipate him being back for fall camp and competing to be the starting guard.
Dawson Weber, when he came here, what did you see in him, and where has he developed?
We saw a tremendous athlete. Dawson was an outstanding baseball player, football player, played on a team in high school that was not very good, but he stood out. Wide receiver, DB, has great hands, great catch radius. I think probably in a different lifetime or at a different situation, he'd be an outstanding wide receiver. He's really grown from a maturity process. I'll be honest, when Dawson got here, he was a little bit of a knucklehead, and I didn't know if he'd make it. I just was always one of those guys that was 5 minutes late, was a couple minutes late. There was always something. I forgot my notebook. I didn't get a ride. But it shows you if you stick with kids, you continue to work with them. Generally, Bison pride starts to seep in a little bit, and they start to see there's a better way of going about things. If I want to have success on the field, I'm going to buy into what the coaches and coaching staff are going to say. Now he's become a leader. You see the growth of Dom Jones during the first half dozen games this year. I give a lot of that credit not only to Coach Braun, but also to Dawson Weber. Dawson did an outstanding job of just always being in Dom's ear at practice every day. Here's where your eyes are. This is what you're thinking. This is what you're concerned about. Look at these splits. It shows just great maturity. We need to continue to challenge him. He's a big asset to us on special teams and defense, and I think we're only scratching the surface yet.
And finally, the last time NDSU entered the playoffs, the loss was 2010. Have you addressed the title mojo, the thinking? I know you said you put South Dakota State behind right away.
Yeah.
But have you addressed that?
We have not. I know it probably frustrates you guys. We don't talk a lot about streaks here. We're talking about the next one. We're talking about ways we can continue to get better. We haven't. Our kids understand the ramifications of the playoffs and how they work. We got to play well, and we're playing a very good football team on Saturday here in the Fargo Dome.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Coach, your last question is from Dom Izzo.
Coach, who's going to be your starting quarterback on Saturday?
Haven't made that decision yet. I anticipate we'll probably make sure you know at about 2:34. I'll let you know.
I know you were asked about Barry earlier. What can you look at that film when you were DC from that national championship game? How much has he evolved from that game to what you're going to see on Saturday?
Well, I think, since that game, there's been a lot of personnel changeover from both teams. But as I mentioned before, I think back in 2018, national championship in 19, he was more willing to try to get that extra yard. I think now, because he's dealt with some injuries, hey, I'll slide, I'll get down, let's get lined up and go again. Having greater control of the offense, again, explosive play, let's get back on the ball, and let's get the defense on their heels. So the tempo aspect of it, I just think he has a better grasp of it, and I think he's just throwing a better ball. Probably comfort level. When you play as many games as he has, you throw together the 18 season, the 19 season, and then what we've had in the spring, he's probably about as confident a young man as they've had at quarterback over the last, and they've had some really good ones at Eastern Washington over the course of the last 5-6 years.
What would you describe the mood of the guys when you saw them yesterday for practice? What's the mood of the team right now?
I think early in the day, I knew Sunday a couple guys came up frustrated. Just the inability to finish. Like I said, I think if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times. When we had the ball with 7 minutes left, a lot of people, maybe even some of the people on the other end of the Zoom, anticipated, well, here's going to be Bison football. We're going to go down the field, score, and this thing might end up 24-20. And we had our opportunities, but you can't make mistakes and have bad snaps, negative plays against good football teams. And, there was a lot of things we needed to correct during the course of the game. We just didn't play very well defensively. I don't know why all of a sudden we missed so many tackles, but it has to be a point of emphasis. And we're going to be challenged again by some great skill kids out of Eastern Washington.
Are you glad to be playing right away? In the past, you've had a bye week before the playoffs begin. Now it's 5 days, and here you go. What your thoughts on that?
It's a little bit different. It's more normal of a work week. But, if you ask, I wish we'd have played a couple more games earlier and had this week off, of course. But I wish we would have had a bye week somewhere. But unfortunately, those options were not in our decision making.